Good story.
You
All
fired
right.
me.
All right. I want to hear this Patreon stuff, but let's do another show and then we take a break.
You ready?
I'm ready. It's recording.
Once again, I got to do this because I'm going to start putting these up. All right. Smarticle Podcast, take 2 coming down. Brandon sucks.
Balls.
3, 2, 1. Got a little bit of sad news this morning, Brandon, or evening, or whenever you'd be listening to this. Actor Bruce Willis has frontotemporal dementia. His family recently announced in a statement on social media, they said it was a relief to finally have a clear diagnosis. He's had some memory problems for a while now. 67-year-old was diagnosed with aphasia, which causes difficulties with speech in last spring, but has progressed and he hasn't been given a more specific diagnosis. Said the family, quote, "Today, there are no treatments for frontotemporal dementia, a reality that we hope can change in the years ahead." I want to get into dementia and some memory issues in a second. But first, let's start with Bruce Willis being like Bruce Willis, and give me your favorite Bruce Willis movie of all time.
Oh, movie. You know, it's funny. I liked him even back when he was on that show on
Moonlighting.
TV. Moonlighting. I thought he was great. He was my
That's
favorite.
my favorite.
Yeah, he was fantastic on that show, and that's
He
sort of
was
where
just dynamic. He like,
yeah.
I remember watching, it was like the 80s. I'm watching that with my dad, and he just like popped on the small screen.
And he wasn't, it was what was the other? It was that famous actress who was the sort
the
of
model.
and he was like the side character in it, but he ended up kind of overtaking the show.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really where he, there's obviously something about actors that have that kind of charisma that just come out on a screen. Now, I would argue that Bruce did much better work earlier in his career than later. At the end, it was just sort of like he was making the same action movie over and over and over. But even when he did some of those action movies, like, did you ever see the movie Reds?
Yes. There's like 2 or 3
of them.
So good.
Yeah, so good. But the first one was amazing. He just was the thing. Obviously, Yippee MFR is great. Most famous line from Die Hard, which I still think, I watched that recently and I'm like, it's obviously dated. It came out in I think the late 80s, but it's still a brilliant movie. It's still fun to watch. And, it was sort of what solidified him as an action hero, the classic broken around the edges action hero who does the right thing. I love that movie. I thought he was really great in that movie. There have been lots of things that he's done that have been amazing. He's got that sort of he had that sort of weird side eye thing he'd give you, kind of where he'd squint. Obviously very charming. I remember even back on Moonlighting, he was already losing his hair. So he just was like, I'm gonna shave it. So, he was bald for most of his career. And yet he had this just incredibly rich career. And it is sad. I mean, this whole thing is sort of
Hold
sad.
on that. So true definition of a movie star, right? 40-year career. Back in the day, I don't remember he did the Planet Hollywoods with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone. They would open up those sort of like.
I thought he did House of Blues.
He was the Planet Hollywood. They would the big one. I went to college in Reno. They opened a Planet Hollywood back in the 90s. He, of course, he was young, so he gets married to Demi Moore. He has these kids.
To me.
So he his life is pretty much played out in front of us for the last 40 years or so ago. I mean, so we've gotten to see him. So now we see him as he transitions to what we're all going to do, eventually die. And he has dementia. And so this is sad. I heard a podcast recently and someone worked with him a couple of years ago on like a low budget thing. And he had to have the earpiece in his ear because he couldn't remember the lines. And so they were saying like the great Bruce Willis, and you're acting with him and you could just clearly see that it was going downhill for him sort of physically. And so here we are today. I mean, nobody wants anybody with dementia, but I mean, Bruce has had a great freaking life.
Yeah. I mean, he's a relatively young man too. I mean, he's 67 years old. It wasn't like, he was 82. I mean, Richard Belzer just died. I was like, oh yeah. I loved Richard Belzer. I thought he was an amazing actor and comedian. I mean, he was 82 years old. So, I mean, it's truly sad and tragic for his family. Too much of his life, probably more because of Demi Moore than anything else, has been played out in the public. I get the feeling he moved to Idaho to kind of escape it and, to try to get his kids away from it. But he always seemed like he was a pretty good dad. Obviously we only know what we see from the outside, but you didn't hear a lot of rumors about Bruce Willis being a dick. You didn't hear a lot about him being, cheating on his wife or being scurrilous or whatever. Maybe he
I
was.
want to add to that. Like, him and Demi have a very public divorce. They have kids together. But all from what you could tell is that they amicably resolved it, and the families were able to gather. Even when she was dating Ashton Kutcher, they were
married
together,
to him, didn't she?
So it's like this idea of that they just grew apart. And I don't know. You're right. There's a lot of respect there for Bruce being a family man.
Yeah, and I think that's probably one of the reasons why so many people kind of not flip out, it's not the right word, but that it becomes a big news story. It's not like Bruce Willis died, he had a heart attack, we're sad for a week and then we move on to the next actor, right? This is going to go on for a while, and he's going to disappear from the public sphere because nobody that has this wants to see wants people to see the decline. So he's probably, locked it down in Ketchum, Idaho. He'll probably be there until he dies. He's never going to act again. Unless there's some sort of cure that comes out in the next couple of years, but it doesn't sound like there is any cure for this. So he's going to decline. It's going to get to the point where he doesn't recognize the people around him. I find dementia and Alzheimer's to be the cruelest of all diseases, worse even than cancer, only because people's lives are taken before they actually die. Like if I was going to die and snuff out, at least I would know the people around me up until that moment. But those people that have, dementia, they just forget everything, like all the people. So it's almost as if they are already dead, but they're alive and their families got to see them. And it's just hard. It's torturous.
So I remember you said something to me when we had a kid early on, like a 2-week-old at home. And you were saying, like, human beings, the body has a strong will to stay alive. So don't freak about your baby being in a crib and getting up every hour just to see if the body's alive. That is good for babies, but really bad for old people, right? Because our brains we could just breathe and live, and our brains could be dead.
Yeah. I mean, dementia eventually kills you because it shuts down the functions, the function of your brain after years, right? But you're basically, your brain forgets how to operate its lungs or its heart or whatever.
That could be 20 years.
It could be 20 years. And so it is if nothing else that comes out of this, it's that this has become people are aware of it. So I had a buddy I played football with in college who was 53 years old. He'd been diagnosed with dementia at like 51. Wow. Died at 53 years old from dementia. I'm convinced it was from playing football.
Wow.
But it's, when he died, it wasn't like the whole world was like, oh my gosh, can you believe that guy died? But when Bruce Willis dies, or when he gets sick with dementia, this is big news, and people start to pay attention, good, bad, or indifferent. People begin to pay attention because he's a guy that, like, that's what makes a movie star in a lot of ways, is you say, yeah, I could sit down with Bruce Willis and have a beer. Yeah. He's probably pretty cool. Right. And it's like we become weird friends with these actors because we sort of feel like we know them. Now, we don't know Bruce Willis at all, or his family, or anything about him, but him getting set, we do know all his roles and his characters, and to see this is just a really sad and tragic spot to be in for the family and for Bruce.
For most of us, not all of us, but whatever, I'll just say it as this: most of us, we go about our day to stay alive, right? We want to be alive. We would do whatever we would take to be there for our kids and stick around as long as possible. But there is some sense of there's a reason people die, and Bruce Willis, if we were once again back on the Serengeti, we would leave him and the hyenas would get him, right? Because that honestly, and that's hard to say, but like, they always cull the herd. The weakest zebra gets eaten first, and that's what would happen. And so we as humans, we want to live forever. Like, if someone say, Brandon, I'm going to give you a pill and you can live guaranteed for an extra 30 years. You might or might not take that, but if you took it, those might end up being like, you could get dementia and be in a coma for 25 of those years. So I'm just saying there is a circle of life, and it does have a meaning.
Yeah. As it's funny. I never really thought about a midlife crisis. I never went through any, I've not gone through some, like, I got to go out and buy a new car or whatever. But I do know that I think more about mortality than I ever have in my life, where I think about let's just say a buddy of mine said he's dating this woman that he really likes, and he's like, he goes, statistically speaking, I've only got about 18 years left, probably, and I want to live it as happy as I can. I thought that was really a profound statement. I don't know how many years I have left. I hope it's more than 18, but I do think there's something about saying, and it's such a cliched term, and Hollywood's the master of the cliched term because it's as if, oh, look at I'm living my best life now. I'm like, well,
YOLO.
the truth is we're all going to get to the end at some point. Doesn't matter who you are, no matter how rich you are. Eventually we get to the end. And I think that we start thinking and pondering about that, our mortality. And that's why dementia is so hard, because it's not like, again, you don't just, hey, that's it, I'm checking out, put me on the ice flow. You got to, your family has to, I mean, I suppose it's probably worse for the family.
Yeah.
Simply because if your brain's already gone, then you've effectively,
Totally.
you're taking a dirt nap, right? So I don't know how I want to go out. I definitely know that I want to make it to my daughter's wedding and to the birth of her children if she decides to have any.
Wow,
but that's kind of all my goal is in life.
You're going
days.
big. I like that. That's
how I want to roll. That's how I want to live my life.
How old's your daughter?
7.
So you're thinking she's going to have kids in,
I don't know, 25 years.
So you're going to get to
80.
Wow. Good for you. You know what?
I'm
Good
80,
for you.
85. I want to go.
Wow.
I want to go. But it's funny. I don't care about the number. I don't care. I honestly don't care what the age is. What I care about is, am I going to be healthy? Am I going to be ambulatory?
You want to take 80
right.
so you could be there.
Right. That's my point.
You should have said, I'll take 80 if I'm not diapering myself in a wheelchair.
Well, but I want to be there for her. I want to see that part of her life. That's important to me. So, hey, I have no guarantees that I'm going to get there.
You want to see that if you're not constant and like,
of course. Yeah.
So,
I mean, I don't know. You've kind of taken us off on a weird rabbit hole here, but I don't know if, even if I was in a state where I was in a wheelchair, I'd still want to see her get married and have children. So I don't know. I guess the question is, or not the question, but the answer for me at least is, I want to live as healthy a life as I can to be a good presence in my family's life for as long as I can, knowing full well that there is a hard stop, that there is a time where I won't be there anymore. And that's just the way it is.
Okay. So I'm from Southern California. I'm not in the Hollywood community. I don't know anybody that Bruce Willis, but my hope, he's 67 years old. I hope as this goes, right at this moment, he just looks and goes, I have had a great life. I hope that he has no regrets. He was a big time star, married to Demi Moore, lots of kids. I hope he knows how just incredibly amazing he was and his life was. I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so too. So, well, Larry, thank you for teaching me about my mortality and that I might be in diapers when my daughter gets married.
You're definitely going to be in diapers.